If you're sick of casual connections that go nowhere, or you're just really not sure what you're aiming for in your close relationships, one of the single biggest shifts you can make is to date more intentionally. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Better Gay Dating Podcast. My name is Ed. I'm a dating and relationship coach for gay and bi men. And in this episode, we're talking about intentional dating. So let's start by defining what intentional dating actually means. And in short, intentional dating is about having some idea of what you're looking for in your close relationships, whatever that might be. It's also about being upfront with others about what you are or aren't looking for, so you can recognize it when you find it and or build it with the right person when they come along. It's sometimes summarized as the saying, begin with the end in mind. So you have an idea of where you're trying to end up while you're dating, while you're trying to build these new connections. And so really, intentional dating has three characteristics to think about, which we'll explore in more detail as the episode goes on. The first is that you've done the work to connect with your true wants or needs in your relationships, which we can call self-awareness. The second is that you become good at communicating those wants and needs to others, which we can just call communication. And the third is that you use those wants or needs to guide the direction your relationship or relationships go in, which you can call alignment or values-based alignment. And so here's what that means in practice and why all of this matters. Doing all of this lets you measure compatibility or align goals much more easily. And I'll do a full episode about compatibility later. But intentionality is really just about being able to measure that, to be able to recognize in yourself what is and isn't working for you or what you are or aren't looking for, and to be able to tell when people come along who are able to give you that, to meet those needs. And so the thing with intentional dating really is it helps you make much more conscious decisions about entering into relationships with someone else. It means you all know why you're there and what direction you're going in. Sometimes this is summarized in dating with this phrase, decide, don't slide, which is about making sure that when you are in a relationship, it's a conscious decision to do that. It's not just a sense of like, oh, we seem to be in this thing, I guess this is a relationship. So that really helps people avoid situationships, and situationship really is just a relationship without a clear direction or intentionality. And so it helps you avoid these kind of are we, aren't we situationships, and just generally tends to create more aligned and communicative relationships from the start. And one of the big benefits of that is it means you get used to talking about your wants and needs much sooner with your partner or partners. And as people get to know each other, often there are these deeper conversations about wants and needs not being met in the early stages of the relationship. You're identifying differences in expectations, in needs, and figuring out how to manage those. That's a huge part of being in a successful relationship. And so this level of intentionality just lets you do that much more easily and also much earlier on in the relationship, which is always a good thing. And so, yeah, it just means it's easier for you to resolve these issues as they inevitably come up, again, as they do in every relationship. And so, yeah, I know what you might be thinking. This is obviously not how a lot of gay dating works. Some of us have hookup app profiles that list literally every detail of what turns us on sexually. But when it comes to talking about all of this stuff in terms of relationship needs, a lot of us freeze up or don't know what to say. I don't even really know what it is that we are looking for when it comes to building relationships. So why is this kind of intentionality often so hard for queer men? You know, and one thing I'll say is it's not just hard for queer men. It's not just about, oh, there's a lot of people in this app-centric world of dating that we live in. We have so many choices. You know, a lot of people haven't really figured out what it is that they want or where they're trying to go. But for us, there often are extra layers to this. One of those reasons is that being vulnerable and authentic often is hard for us. We've all had invalidating experiences from being upfront about our wants and needs, whether that's been with people outside of our community or other gay and queer men. We've all experienced rejection or shame from saying how we feel or what we want, or we've just felt like we were wanting too much. Maybe we've been told we were wanting too much, or we were too sensitive. And it can also feel like what we want just doesn't exist within our community. And so what this often does is it creates this culture where we tend to doubt or minimize how we truly feel, or we end up afraid of communicating it directly, or sometimes we're just worried about what it might mean for us if we recognized what it is that we truly want or truly how we feel. And one thing I'll say as a coach is that as gay and bi men, it can be really difficult to find these spaces or to have opportunities to be in spaces where we can fully connect with our true wants and needs. It's a really common theme in the coaching work I do, and it's really amazing to see people be in a space where they are fully accepted and are fully safe and able to explore truly how they feel or what they want and what they realize about themselves in that process. And so all of this means, all of this cultural conditioning means often we end up beating about the bush about what we want in relationships, especially, or we even feel ashamed of it. We're ashamed to admit what we want in case it leads to rejection or further shame. But as I've said, there are these big advantages to owning how we feel and what we want, especially if you're looking for something longer term. So when it comes to dating more intentionally, let's talk about what that looks like in practice and what you can do to bring more intentionality when you're making these new connections. So the first step really is to get much clearer on your wants and needs in dating. So the main question to ask yourself is simply, irrespective of what other people might think or what's expected of you or what you think is out there, what do you want in your personal life? In other words, what would the right relationship offer you? And that's obviously a huge question. So some smaller things you can think about in the meantime might be things like, what kind or kinds of relationship are you open to? Like, are you only looking for a long-term connection? Are you open to shorter-term connections? Are you open to a relationship that might be long distance with the right person? Or are you really only looking for local connection? So there are a few questions you can start to ask. One of the bigger questions to ask really is like, what do you value or admire in a partner? And this is a question that comes up quite a lot in the coaching work that I do. And it's a really interesting one to really get to the heart of what is it that you value or admire in a partner. And I'm not just talking about looks. I'm not really talking about looks or anything like that. I'm talking about personality. I'm talking about values. I'm talking about who is that person that would be the right partner for you and would give you what you need in a relationship. One other big question that can help with this is to think about like, what parts of yourself do you want to feel seen or valued in the relationship? Like, how do you want to feel seen or valued? One coaching client I work with, for example, one of the things that came up, so he's a research doctor, and one of the things that came up is a big part of his life is doing medical research, and it's something that's really important to him and fulfilling to him and a big part of his life. One of the things he really was able to identify in the work we did together was that actually that was a really important thing to him, and a lot of the previous partners he'd been with sort of were dismissive of that, or they just didn't get it in any way, and it wasn't about him saying, okay, I need to be with someone I can talk in huge detail about the work that I do, every day, but it really was about finding someone who would value that or admire that in him, and that really helped him move forward and find partners who were more aligned and kind of able to see and value him in the way that he needed. So there's a few bigger questions there, but if that still feels like quite a lot to get your head round, one really great place to start is, are there some things you definitely don't want in your relationships right now? Are there some things you're definitely not open to? Are there some things you would consider? Really, the idea with all of this is just to get the ball rolling, thinking about how you feel and what you want in your personal life that you might not have right now. And then from there, as I said, the challenge is about getting good at communicating that to others, usually sooner rather than later, so you can get a sense of how aligned you are with someone. So that might mean being clear about your general expectations in your app bio. So saying clearly whether you're looking for long-term, short-term, casual sex, just friends, really putting that out there and calling out to the right person so that they can know and you can both know whether that's likely to be a match for you both. Another important thing is to get used to having conversations about your expectations and values when it comes to relationships, to figure out how much you're on the same page with all of these things. And it also means in practice being realistic if you find out there's a significant mismatch in intentions or expectations. Maybe one of you is only looking for something casual, the other is looking for something long term and isn't open to something casual. That's obviously a sign there's going to be tension there, or there's not really a match there. And so having these conversations lets you figure that out sooner rather than later. So and the beauty of that is it allows you to find that out early and, if necessary, approach the connection differently. So that might mean saying it sounds like we're on the same page. I'd love to keep getting to know you better. Or it might mean saying something like, if you're just looking for something casual, that's not going to work for me. It was really nice to meet you and good luck. Or it might mean saying something like, it sounds like we're not a romantic match, but we could be friends if you're open to that. And so, being upfront about what you want, whether that's something long-term or just something casual, will put some people off. It is going to create, or it is going to help you realize that you're not aligned with a lot of people. But that's the key here. It's usually better that happens early before you've invested a ton in a new connection, if that connection is not going to be able to give you what you want. And so really the big thing with intentional dating is that it allows you to focus on quality over quantity. And I'm not necessarily saying quality of people, I'm talking about quality of connection. It really lets you focus in on those connections that are well aligned. But it is going to reduce your potential dating pool, but it increases your chances of finding a well aligned connection. And that's why ultimately intentional dating is so game changing. So all of that said, just a few notes and caveats about some of the nuances here. One big thing about this is a process. This is not something, you're not going to have this light bulb moment one day. You probably won't have this light bulb moment one day where you just wake up and you're like, oh, this is what I've wanted my whole life, and I didn't even know it. That is typically not how this works. And so if a lot of this sounds like something that's completely new to you and you're not sure where to start, I just want to say that intentional dating is not about having it all figured out right now, or locking yourself away for a year so you can think about what it is that you want and then moving forward with that. We often do learn more about our wants and needs in dating with time and experience. Sometimes what we think we want is not quite what we want, or sometimes we have to be in a connection that doesn't quite give us what we want to realize what it is for future relationships, and that's a very normal part of dating, of getting to know yourself better so you can find these more aligned connections. One other thing I'll say is it is also okay not to know what you want, or to be in an exploration or still figuring it out phase. That's really common for a lot of people who are new to dating within this community. Maybe they've just come out, maybe they've taken a long break from dating, maybe they've just been in a relationship that ended and they're still figuring out what is right for them moving forward. So none of this is about saying if you haven't 100% figured out what you want and need, that you can't be out there and you can't be dating and you have to wait until that happens. But one big thing is it usually is better if you recognize that you are in this exploration or still figuring it out phase, and you can communicate that to others. And part of the reason is that for you, it often will feel validating and grounding to be able to say, actually, you know what, I'm not ready for this or this, I'm still kind of figuring things out. But it also means for other people that you give them a chance to know where you're at so they can plan their lives accordingly, which can avoid a lot of the difficult feelings or difficult situations that come from these situationships where nobody's really sure what they want and nobody's really sure what they're doing and where the relationship may or may not be going. One other big thing I'll say is that knowing what you want obviously doesn't mean it'll appear tomorrow. I wish it did. I wish I could just tell you that figuring all this out will change your life overnight. Obviously, that's not always how it works. Sometimes I see this a lot with the clients I work with. Often we end up figuring out these details, but then there is obviously a period of time before the right person or the right connection or right match comes along. That's very normal. And one other thing I'll say with this, it is obviously important to keep your goals realistic. Intentional dating is not about coming up with this laundry list of saying, I would only ever date someone who's at least 6'4" and has blue eyes and has a job in a certain industry or whatever it is. It's not about saying, this person has to be exactly like this. And actually, often when people are doing that, they're usually hyper-focusing on these kind of nice-to-haves rather than genuine deeper needs. Intentional dating really is about figuring out these deeper needs of like, what is it that I would admire in a partner, or what do I need from a relationship, or how again, as I said, do I need to feel seen or valued in that relationship? So really, it's just about kind of boiling it down to the essence of this as much as possible. One thing I often do with clients in sessions is we'll really try and figure out the 3 to 5 most essential things that they're looking for in a relationship or from a partner. And that really helps give them a kind of guide or North Star when it comes to making connections. And they might have a list of nice to haves, of extras that are good to have if they find them. But it really helps you figure out what those essentials are. Again, so that you can turn down connections that aren't aligned much sooner, so that you can have time and energy to focus on the connections that are. I also want to say as a final caveat that being intentional doesn't mean being ultra rigid or unromantic in dating. It's not, again, about having this checklist and going through it on a first date to figure out whether someone is worth your time or not. Intentionality still leaves room for connection and surprises to happen naturally. It just gives you more purpose and direction in how you try and make those new connections. Because really, as I said, intentional dating is mostly about better self-awareness and communication. It's being honest with yourself and with others about what you want and need in your relationships, then using that as a foundation to build with well-aligned partners. And again, this is often a process. So if in doubt, if you're not sure where to go from this episode, the best thing to do is to just start asking yourself, how clear are you on your true wants and needs in dating? And how clear are you communicating those things with others? And if the answer is, actually, I could be clearer on both of those things, then that's the invitation or the opportunity to start bringing more intentionality into the way that you connect with others. Because something that I see a lot in the work that I do is if you're tired of dating that feels directionless, often the game changer isn't about that right or perfect person suddenly appearing. It's about getting clear on what the right relationship looks like for you first. And of course, if this is something you want help navigating, as I said, this is a really common area I help people with in coaching. We often spend a lot of time trying to pinpoint people's exact wants and needs in relationships, maybe which of them they did and didn't get fulfilled in past relationships, or just what they could do to get them fulfilled in future. So if that's something you want help unpacking, just head to bettergaydating.com to find out more and sign up for a free discovery call. Thanks so much for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments below what resonated with you in this episode. And if you do know them and want to share the maybe 3 to 5 most important things for you in a relationship, please do. It's always really interesting to see where other people are at with this. But other than that, take care and I'll see you next time.